Being involved in an auto accident, you and your family were lucky to escape without injury. But did you really? Many people experience pain or complications months later, when the accident is just a faded memory. Chiropractic care can help and is covered by your auto insurance policy if you are involved in an accident. Don't wait. Make the call. Shillington Chiropractic Associates, 610-775-X-Ray.
Chiropractic Better Health Naturally on BCTV is supported by Shillington Chiropractic Associates.
Good evening and welcome to our continuing program on chiropractic called Better Health Naturally. Tonight we're going to be talking about car accidents, and we have an esteemed local attorney of 25 years in town?
Yes.
25 years. Man.
Plus one.
You know what I love is when the attorneys in the law firm add their experience together and they come up with 50 years. So we got 50 years of experience sitting here tonight on the medical side and on the legal side. But tonight's a live program. You can call us here at the studio. The number is 610-378-0426. I'm glad your signs are big so I don't have to put my glasses on to read them. Anyway, we see so many car accidents, and after this beautiful winter of global warming that we've experienced, and the last snowstorm was the first day of spring. Was that 4 inches?
I think 4 to 6, 4 to 8, depending where you were. A lot of inches.
Yeah, we put out a newsletter. That's right, up north it was worse. We put out a newsletter because we see so many people that are involved in car accidents. And they are involved in them, and we don't necessarily see you when you have your car accident, your car is damaged or totaled or getting fixed or whatever. I see, and this is classic, we see you 10 to 15 years later after you've worn the discs in your neck out, for example. Then you come in and you have constant pain, you have neurological symptoms, tingling, numbness, weakness in the muscles, whatever it might be. And then we talk to you and say, what happened? And classically everybody goes, I'm like JC, I walk on water. Nothing happens. I never had any accident. The best one was a guy who came into us a couple of years ago, very nice gentleman, and he said, never had a bad accident. And then he remembered after 3 months of treatment, his neck was an amazing mess, and we always take x-rays. He said, when I was 17 years old, down on the river road down by Burke's campus, you know that winding road, and there's a lockman's shack down there on the Telpahocken Creek. He said he was standing in the back of his buddy's pickup truck, and his buddy went too fast around the corner, and he rolled the truck over on his side, and he went flying out like Superman. So we go, aha. Well, here's the point we're talking about tonight. You need to get checked out after you've had a car accident. Now, there's 2 types of insurance, and I'll let Mr. Restrepo go over that, and then we'll come back and then we'll talk a little bit more about how severe the trauma is, and it's amazing that our bodies just don't display more of it sooner.
I'm not a doctor, but for the human body to undergo a car collision is a lot of force, and Dr. Johns has it all down to the number of tons and pounds and things like that. However, I'm here to let you know a little bit about the insurance end of the medical end of car insurance. Every car insurance, by law in Pennsylvania, must carry a minimum of $5,000 of medical payment coverage. That is regardless of whether you were hit by somebody or you hit somebody. Has nothing to do with fault. Long ago, our legislature wisely decided it's better to have a source of medical payment coverage being your own rather than arguing about who's at fault and letting medical bills sit. So again, I urge anybody who has been in a car accident or been hurt by a car to make sure that they use the $5,000 at a minimum of medical payment coverage you have on your own policy. If you don't own a car or live with a relative who doesn't own a car, you go to the car in which you were occupying or that unfortunately might have hit you.
Now, there's a lot to this, because the first gut reaction to patients is, Well, the accident wasn't my fault, so you need to go sue that guy, or you need to go get that guy's insurance. And this no fault concept doesn't really enter in until after you've had the first car experience, car accident, and then it's not just for the driver, it's for everybody that's in your car.
Yes.
If it's your insurance and all those other people who don't have their own car and aren't insured and all that kind of thing. But the point is, there are so many subtle nuances to this that I can't keep track of it all. I'm vaguely familiar with it, but like you just said, if you drive a commercial vehicle, and let's talk about two different types of insurance. The cheap insurance that I call limited tort, and the better insurance that you got to have called full tort.
Yeah, and I'll explain the distinction between those two. Whenever you get an automobile insurance policy in Pennsylvania, and most states for that matter, you can pay less money, you get what you pay for, and you can get limited tort. Limited tort means you are limited in your ability to recover money for the fault of another person and your injuries. You have to prove a serious injury. The law defines a serious injury as a serious impairment of a body function, raises lots of questions. The other type of insurance is full tort that gives you the full ability to make a legal claim for money if you are hurt without having to prove a serious injury. I think you know which one we prefer.
Now,
for your sake.
Yeah, this is, I don't want to say this, let me give you an example. We have a friend of ours in church down in Lancaster, and I heard a couple of weeks ago that his wife and his daughter were involved in a car accident. They were hit by somebody from the side. Thank God they just got a new car, and it has the 7 different airbags on the sides, not just the ones in the front. And incidentally, if you get hit from the rear, there's no airbags that go off. It's only when you get hit from the front bumper or from the sides. And the rear accident is the most common. So the airbags go off. Thank God their daughter was sitting in the back seat, I believe towards the passenger side, but the car rolled 5 times. When they went to the hospital, they didn't even take pictures of the daughter's neck. Now, we're going to give you some figures here on, like, for example, if you're in a rear-end accident with an average car and you're the car up front and you're stopped and a car in back of you rolls into you at 10 miles an hour, that's basically a rolling stop. That's 50,000 pounds of force that your car has to absorb. And they measure the chest. That's where the 50,000, they're not measuring the neck, the smallest part of your body. It's twice the force for your neck. So if it's 50,000 pounds here, it's 100,000 pounds of force to your neck. Now, that's why you have the headrest, because if your head doesn't go back into extension, you don't injure yourself nearly as bad. But still, the amount of force and trauma is unbelievable. And it's permanent damage. So you need to get checked out. You need to get checked out. And then the reason I like Mr. Restrepo is because our patients can call him up and say, look, I've had this accident. And he stands on the sidelines of the case. And he's like a coach. If something happens, you call him up and say, hey, the insurance company sent me this. Or the insurance company sends checks to the patients and says, hey, look, if you sign this, you agree that everything's done and you're all better. And this is your pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And they don't realize that their case is over when they sign that check.
That's a really good point. We deal with a lot of, we counsel a lot of people, really without charging them a lot of times, depending on whether we take a case or not. But what Dr. Johns is pointing out is so true. There's a lot of landmines when you're dealing with insurance. There's a lot of questions when you're dealing with insurance. If you try to settle a personal injury case on your own as a result of a motor vehicle accident, it is not the best idea. It's a bad idea. Because there's just so many things to be aware of, liens, costs, medical bills, and some things that might go under the radar.
And they say to me all the time, they say, when is this patient done with? If we could show the first picture, we've got a picture of the San Francisco 49er football player, Chris Boylan, there it is, who has retired at the age of 24 from the 49ers because of head trauma. And the National Football League, which for years has disputed the evidence that its players had a high rate of severe brain damage, has stated in federal court documents that it expects nearly 1/3 of their retired players to develop long-term cognitive problems. Now, these are football players. Imagine what happens when you're sitting in a car, and the first diagnosis I give anybody in a car accident with whiplash is post-concussion syndrome. And the thing that you got to watch out for is the first night that you go to sleep, you have to make sure that there's somebody there to make sure you wake up. Because when you go through a little accident like 10 miles an hour at 50,000 pounds of force, you push the brain up against the front on the inside and you get a bruise here, and then you push the brain up against the back here, because the brain is like a bowl of jelly and it sloshes back and forth, but it bruises, and that's the post-concussion syndrome. So we see this all the time. So you know, you've seen this. You've heard of the different types of concussions with football players. The first one is you just dizzy and stagger around. The second one is you lose cognitive ability, and you get a little sick perhaps, and then you throw up, you get fluid coming out of your ears, you get fluid coming out of the whole schmear. And you can actually look in the back of somebody's eyeballs when they first come in 12 to 24 hours, and they call it papilledema because the brain swells and you can see the arteries are all engorged with blood. So these are things that you've got coverage for, and you need to use them. It's just, when insurance companies say to me, when is this patient going to reach maximum medical improvement, their favorite term, I basically say, well, when their coverage runs out, when they run out of money, because I will see you and then we'll increase the time between each visit, but you'll come back to me and say, hey, you know what, I was shoveling snow, or I tapped my head in the car getting in or out, and now my neck is out again. We try and go as far as you can, but this is permanent damage, and you age your spine 10 years with the average accident, every time you have an accident.
Having had personal experience with chiropractic care, it is very beneficial, especially for car accident type of injuries where, and I'm not a doctor, but I've seen the x-rays of people that have been injured in a car accident. The musculoskeletal system just gets out of alignment. And it's really important to get seen because these injuries are cumulative and it can affect you years down the road.
This is just like the tires in the front end of a car. When you go through whiplash, you misalign your neck. And when you misalign your neck, I don't want to do this to you too quick here, but I'll use the model. Can I hold it like that? Good. This is the natural curve in your neck, and when you misalign it, you misalign the bone so the neck goes straight. It goes straight like this. That's the classic sign of a whiplash. But then after 10 or 15 years, you wear these discs out, just like you wear out the tires in the front end of the car when the car is misaligned. And that's when you come in. And after 15 years, your case is over. If they last for 2 years, it's amazing. Most car accidents, they try and settle. The insurance company is always on you and I to say, well, you know, are they done?
This is such an excellent point, and we're just kind of randomly getting into it. But the one thing about injuries is they are often a lifetime, unfortunately, experience. And I think what Dr. Johns is telling you all is that when you experience an injury, it lasts, and even though you believe that you've reached a maximum medical improvement or you're as good as you're going to get, a lot of times that injury is predisposing you for further injury down the road. Might be 10, might be 15 years, but you will maybe feel it down the road. So it's always, I can't emphasize this enough, we emphasize this to all of our clients, get seen by a doctor. Chiropractic, otherwise chiropractors are excellent for motor vehicle accidents because of the type of injury you sustain in a car accident.
Now, you know, you don't have to stretch your mind too far to figure major public personalities that have had head trauma. Do you remember when Muhammad Ali said on The Tonight Show, whoever thought when they came to the fight tonight that they would see the launching of the first black satellite? He was fighting Norton, I think. But now look at Muhammad Ali. He's got Parkinson's disease. Look at the actor Michael J. Fox, the guy from
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future on his skateboard. We see that all the time. You know, it always amazes me. If you ride a motorcycle in this state, you don't have to wear a helmet. But if you ride a bicycle, it's against the law not to wear a helmet. Head trauma is cumulative. All trauma is cumulative. And as these football players are bringing to our attention, it affects you. It actually makes, they've done a study, and the study is a real interesting one. They've taken identical twins, and they have identical twins. One would fall out of a car, and the other one didn't. And they'd follow them for a whole lifetime. And they found a direct connection between those people that had head trauma and the study that they're talking about with the national football players.
I see clients all the time with head trauma, and it may not seem severe, but they start complaining about very similar symptoms. Dizziness, loss of balance, fatigue, difficulty comprehending words, word retrieval problems. a lot of different symptoms, even irritability, anxiety, all sorts of different symptoms that seem to stem from a post-concussion syndrome or a head injury. And it's just really important to be aware of the symptoms if you ever get into any car accident. As Dr. Johns explained, you don't necessarily have to hit your head. It's a shaken baby syndrome. You can just, and I'm no doctor, obviously, but
very good.
The brain just rattles inside the skull and it can damage.
Now, you know, we see all of these, and we see the classic ones. Remember George, the poor guy that walked out on the walkway 2 years ago. And this poor guy should have been in the other world by now. He got hit by a pickup truck and thrown like 20-odd feet. Now, George, at that time, I think he had a car, and I don't even remember. But here's where all of this stuff gets wild, weird, and wonderful. The person who hit him stopped. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you get hit by somebody. And that's why, we got to talk about that. If you don't have underinsured and uninsured.
Yeah, let's hit on that quickly. And you just brought up a great point. If you get hit by somebody, I've had plenty of clients that get hit by somebody and the person takes off. That is a hit and run. If you do not have uninsured motorist, otherwise known as UM, you don't have any protection. That is the one way you can protect yourself against an uninsured driver or a hit and run driver, and there's a lot of those on the road.
Yeah, and the average is once every 10 years, if you drive a car, you're going to have an accident. The range in that statistic is you can have a full head-on collision at 65 miles an hour. I remember when the first K cars came out with airbags, the first guy that came into me with a 65-mile-an-hour head-on collision was a preacher. And I thought he was lying. I said, you couldn't have survived that accident. He said, I'm not lying. I still remember that. But then the other end of that statistic is a grandmother in a parking lot backing up until she hits something. That's classified as an accident too. So there's a range in there. But still, if you get hit and somebody takes off, look at the road rage incident out in California, the bullet fragments, the guy pulled up next to a woman and shot into her car, and they're still looking for her.
Those, again, are uninsured claims because you have an unidentified vehicle, meaning a hit and run. That is UM, uninsured motorist coverage. Make sure you have it. The other one that complements that, and it's more expensive, but it's very important, is underinsured motorist. Quickly, I'll explain that. If you get hit by somebody who's carrying the minimal liability policy in Pennsylvania, that pays $15,000 per person. That won't get you real far with hospital bills or wage loss. What you need is to protect yourself in case somebody who is at fault carries minimal insurance and you have more of a catastrophic injury and claim.
We hear about the wild, weird, and wonderful. There was a group of Mexican musicians. I always get musicians and magicians confused. And they, 4 o'clock in the morning, were driving the wrong way in a van on 422. This was a couple of years ago, and they had 3 or 4 accidents before they had their final head-on. And obviously there was a problem with their residency, and they didn't have any insurance. But if you weren't covered, you're out of luck. And then this is the other thing that drives me nuts. The kids come in, college kids, whatever, my kids, and they go, I can go on the internet and get insurance. Yeah. No. And I can go talk to the general and get insurance. And they don't cover this stuff. And then when they give you a piece of paper and they say, here, you need to sign this, it's a waiver for you to get off of full tort.
I would, and I'm not in the insurance business, but recommendation, get an agent, somebody who will explain the differences, explain the coverages, because most people don't understand the coverages unless you want to come to me and I'll explain them to you.
Right, they learn after their first accident.
Yes, I just had a fine gentleman today, so I learned a lot about insurance because now I've got to use it.
This is learning the hard way.
And you don't want to do that.
No. And then it's not just you. If you're a father or a family man, it's everybody else in your car. And
that is so important. That is such an important consideration. It's not just, it is your whole family. It is because everybody that resides in your household is covered by your insurance. Very important. You're not just getting it for yourself, your wife, your spouse. You're getting it for your children and your family and every relative who resides in your household.
And there are those cases, elderly people, retired people, young people, where there is a hit and run, your child walks out in a walkway and gets hit by a car, then your coverage is used because they can't find the other person.
Yes. Again, it all goes back to personal injury protection, they call it, but the medical coverage under your insurance policy covers you regardless of who's at fault. That's the first source by law that is mandated that gets paid out for medical bills before any other source.
We just want to read a couple of little statistics to you. We talked about this one, but 16-year-olds are 20 times more likely than adults to die in an automobile crash, and 3 times more likely to die than an 18 to 19-year-old. Every single day, 19 people aged 15 to 20 are killed. More than 1,800 more than 1,800 people are injured in vehicle crashes. This stuff is all over the internet. And this is one of the other things I wanted to say too. I didn't give this picture to the people in the back, but there's a phrase in the Bible from Psalms that goes, "Yea, lo, I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil." I changed that to, "Yea, lo, I drive through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for I am the biggest SUV of them all." When you buy a super subcompact car, there's dangers involved. And I don't care about the gas mileage. I care about getting myself and my family home. And in this past winter, we have seen, did you see that one accident on the highway out west where some guy was in a pickup truck and 2 tractor trailers went and smacked him and he was like in a little wedge?
No.
Yeah, like for 3 hours before they fished him out. I mean, heaven forbid in this statistic that you have 1 car accident every 10 years. That's the 1 car accident you have every 10 years, and it's a life ender. So I like as much metal around me, but with numbers like this, when you get hit, let me put it this way, Volvo said if you're a 180-pound man and you drive your car into a brick wall at 30 to 35 miles an hour, 4,000 pounds of force push against you into the dashboard. Now, you know, I have some patients that are bodybuilders and whatnot, and they think they can hold on to the steering wheel. Besides the fact that it happens in less than 1/10 of a second, the impact and the force that goes through the car, your muscles can't contract that fast, and I don't know anybody that can do a 4,000-pound bench press.
If your hands are on the steering wheel, someone then gets hurt.
Yeah, oh yeah, if you got your thumbs in, then you tear your thumbs apart.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That happens all the time. And my wife would kill me if I don't mention this. If you have just a tap on the back end and you've got children in your car and car seats, those car seats are scrap. They have to be thrown out. Graco just had like a $3 million fine for a problem with the buckles. I thought I was kind of getting senile with my grandkids when I was trying to put them in their car seats, you know. But those things are just like a little finger puzzle to try and get a hold of. But when you have car seats, it's very important that you anchor them properly, and just the slightest little tap, and it's like dropping a motorcycle helmet. As soon as you drop it, it's no good.
The one statistic that I found interesting too is 58 out of 100 new drivers, 16 years old primarily, get into a crash the first year. That must be why my expensive insurance just won't go away. But the younger you are, the less experience you have, and I can't emphasize this enough. I'm here primarily to talk about the insurance coverage. Just make sure you check out your policy. There's a page called the declaration page. It has all your coverages listed. Look at it, maybe consult with an attorney or an insurance agent to make sure your coverage is proper, to make sure it covers you medically and liability-wise as best as you can.
Mr. Restrepo is in West Reading. I'm in Shillington. You can find us in the phone book in the big town of Reading. But it's very important. If you see the words on your declaration page, limited tort, call up your insurance or call up Mr. Restrepo. He'll tell you how to get out of it, because you can get it. It costs like $38, $40 more, you know, every 6 months or something like that.
It will cost more every month. It all depends on the type of cars you're driving. I'm not an insurance person, but do change full tort. Make sure you have uninsured and underinsured. This is just as important as full tort. Make sure you have those 3 coverages. Very, very important. It will cost you, but you do get what you pay for.
Yep, and the odds are you're going to have a car accident. We all do. If we were driving horses and buggies, it wouldn't be a bad thing, I guess, until you get hit by a car. Good night. We'll see you next month. Take care.
Have you been injured on the job? Has your pain lasted for an extended period of time? Have you reported your injury to your company? Have you been examined by a company-authorized doctor? Did they say you were ready to go back to work while you were still in pain? You have certain rights, including visiting other doctors. In many cases, chiropractic care is more effective in relieving pain from back injuries. Call 610-775-X-Ray today and let Shillington Chiropractic Associates put you on the road to recovery.